Okay, hey everyone. Today I'm going to explain the wounds, the types of it, the wound healing, and so basically the wound classification and the wound healing. So the whole classification and the other classification, the WHO classification is the main category that we have to follow. We have to be aware of. The type 1 clean wound, and then clean contaminated and dirty infected wound. So the clean wound, the potential infection going to be from 1 to 3%, and the clean contaminated wound, the risk of infection is 5 to 8%, and the contaminated wound, it's going to be 20 to 25% risk of infection. Okay, so the type IV dirty infected wound going to be from 30 to 40% of rate of infection. Let's get into the inflammation and the clean wound. No inflammation, the clean contaminated wound the same, and the contaminated wound we found that traumatic wound. Here's the acute inflammation present. Just not the same as clean contaminated or clean wound. So the contaminated wound, we're gonna find some sort of inflammation there. The dirty infected wound, we're gonna find the inflammation it doesn't mention here. So but yeah, maybe there's some sort of inflammation. What about the wound primarily closed, not drained? Here is wound primarily closed, not drained. The same, the clean contaminated. The contaminated wound, we're not gonna find some sort of same thing about the wound. Okay, so here is the wound primarily closed, not drained. And urodigestive and genitourinary tract not entered. This is the type 1 clean wound. So basically, we're going to be very superficial with the skin. We're not gonna enter the urinary tract nor the respiratory tract even, or the GI tract. The type 2 clean contaminated wound, there's going to be no inflammation, just the same as the clean wound. The urodigestive or genitourinary tract and entered under controlled circumstances. So basically, here's we're gonna have some entrance, but here we don't have any sort of entrance. Here we have both of them are closed, and here's the entrance with controlled circumstances. Here's the contaminated wound, acute inflammation present, and infection from 20 to 25%, and traumatic wound less than 4 hours old, because the contaminated wound or resembling the dirty infected wound so much. So that why once we found a less than 4 hours, it indicates contaminated wound. But once it is more than 4 hours, it indicates dirty infected wound because they are already similar to each other. So there's acute inflammation, not the same as clean contaminated, because they are already contaminated. So we're gonna find some sort of inflammation and germs are there. Gross seepage, contamination from respiratory, gastrointestinal, biliary, or genitourinary tract. Okay, so this is the contaminated wound. We're gonna find all of these stuff, such gross seepage, contamination from the respiratory, gastrointestinal, biliary, or genital urinary tract. Okay, so just there's some sort of seepage. So once you see seepage, that indicates contaminated wound, because we didn't have seepage on the clean contaminated wound, but in the contaminated wound only, and as well we could find it on the dirty infected wound, but the period differs. Okay, here is the traumatic one, more than 4 hours old. Organism present at surgical site prior to procedure, existing infection. Perforation, gastrointestinal, biliary, respiratory, or genitourinary tract. Basically, we're gonna have perforation as here, just the same as here, but the main difference is within the period. This is more than 4 hours and this is less than 4 hours. So contaminated and dirty infected wound, approximately they are similar to each other, but here is more than less than 4 hours, and here is dirty infected wound more than 4 hours. Okay, we've done from the clean wound, clean contaminated, which already resembles the clean wound, but the only difference is maybe like in the entrance of the aerodigestive or genitourinary tracts. The contaminated wound here is like almost the same as dirty infected wound, but here is less than 4 hours and here is more than 4 hours. This is the wound classification according to WHO classification. Now we're gonna move to other classification. Here's we have intentional, surgical, and accidental and chronic. So intentional surgical, we're gonna find incision and excision. Basically, this is like another classification, not the same as the WHO classification. In the intentional surgical classification, in the intentional surgical, we're gonna find incision and excisional. Basically, the incision, purposeful cut through intact tissue for the purpose of the exposure, and excisional removal of the tissue. So basically, here's the intentional or surgical, and accidental, traumatic, and chronic. This is another classification, not the same as WHO. Intentional surgical is going to be either incision or excisional. The incision means cut through intact tissue for the purpose of the exposure, and the excisional we're gonna remove the entire the tissue. So this is the difference between the incision and the excision on the inner intentional surgical. Okay. The accidental traumatic, here we have 6 types. The closed, open, simple, complicated, clean, and contaminated. Closed, skin intact, underlying tissue damaged, but the skin is still intact. So the problem in the underlying tissue damage, here we're gonna have like blister, simple fracture. So the blister and simple fracture, all of these are closed wounds. In the open, skin disrupted, but not so massive tissue has been removed from, but rather just disrupted. We have here examples such laceration and opened fracture. So in the laceration, here we're gonna have some sort of skin disruption and open fracture as well, but not a more or greater of the skin is being removed. Now just a little bit of the skin disrupted. This is the open and the closed. The simple skin disrupted, okay, and just the same as the open. No loss or destruction of the tissue. No foreign body implanted, so it is almost the same as the open. Example like minor penetration and cut with sharp object. The complicated, skin disrupted, underlying tissue loss or destroyed, foreign body implanted. So basically here is the complicated, we have underlying tissue lost or destroyed. So a lot of tissue is being removed from the site, and foreign body may be implanted as well, such as severe burn, stub, or bullet wound. So this is the complicated wounds. What about the clean wound? Simple wound caused by a sharp-edged object, expected to be sutured and healed by the first intention without infection. Just the same as laceration. So the clean just maybe the same as the open. is sort of like simple wound, just the same as the simple. Okay. Like as well as the same as the like the not not open, but yeah, maybe like the same as the open and the simple, the clean ones. Contaminated, complicated wound caused by a dirty object may need debridement. It has a high potential for becoming infected. Examples such crush type injury and foreign body implantation. So the foreign body implantation and sort of crush type of injuries are all of these considered as contaminated wounds. Okay, so the contaminated wound, clean wounds, and complicated, such as severe burn or stab or pulley wound where a lot of tissue have been removed. The simple as well as the like the simple basically minor. Yep, I just have described this. The open and the closed. We've said that the simple and open and clean, all of these are having the same category or they are resemblant to each other. So basically the accidental traumatic are 6 types, okay? Okay, the chronic wound that fails to heal over an extended period of time, such decubitus ulcer, pressure sore, wound caused by inadequate circulation, or in which healing is delayed as a result of vascular compromise. This is so easy, such as diabetic ulcers or such. So this is the other classification we've done from it. Here we have the accidental, traumatic, and chronic, and as well as the intentional surgical. So surgical, accidental, and chronic. These are all just the accidental, and this is the intentional or surgical, and this is the chronic ones. Okay, now we're getting into we've done it from the wound classification. Now we're going to the wound healing.